Hey there guys, and welcome back to RGA, or otherwise known as RuneScape's greatest achievements. In today's episode, we'll be covering something just a little bit different. I'll be taking you all through the journey of the Inferno, and how a select few individuals took it one step further, entering the realm of speedrunning. I'll give you all the inside scoop on one of the most challenging pieces of content in RuneScape history, and show exactly how these few talented individuals brought speedrunning to old school RuneScape. It started all the way back over the Christmas holidays in the year 2017, where the player known as Calvino would simply try and better himself by adjusting a number of different variables in order to optimize the waves. Calvino would both stream on Twitch and post his full runs on YouTube, which in turn garnered the interest of quite a few well-known players. These particular runs were brought to the attention of both Adwam and Turney all the way back in early 2018. Where they ended up developing a bit of a friendly rivalry, subconsciously going as fast as they could to see who could get the pet before one another. And who could have guessed that this particular rivalry would turn out to help shape the notion of speedrunning in old school RuneScape. Over the years, gear setups played one of the most integral parts in helping towards chipping away at the time. Whether it be from updates to small DPS calculations, shaving off the few seconds intertwines what it really means to be a speedrun in general. And as you can see on screen above, over the years we've seen a lot of change in terms of the gear setups from back then till now. Over time, barriers would develop that certain gear would help overcome, such as switching an arcane for an alley, over time reducing the damage received while setting up off-ticks without the use of pillars. For example, you can see Adicon starting each wave in the center of the cave. As we get later into the waves, this will not change. Thus, the Elysian Spirit Shield will become the best in slot, due to its passive effect of a 70% chance to reduce all damage by 25%. By around mid-June 2020, the speedrun community had taken off, with a number of substantial names coming across the radar, all working together to better themselves and their peers. And with more minds on the matter at hand, they quickly came to the conclusion that hit points could be recovered over time, where the notion of time couldn't. In other words, even your magic attack bonus could be spared, creating more room for inventory conservation, as range defense bonus would prioritize over mage, meaning that you could drop the ancestral altogether. In conclusion, gear setups play an integral role in the development of subcategories that would determine the time barriers that you just couldn't surpass otherwise. And as of early 2020, the optimal gear setup had been realized and a number of individuals would move on to the micromanagement of the changes in wave control. Alongside the new gear setup came the integration of an entirely new metagame, and brought together an array of highly skilled players from around the world, where they all gathered in one particular place. The Inferno Speedrunning Discord became the hub where all the runners would collaborate with one another in developing their current methods. They would even go as far as to create a substantial amount of resource packs for those who are interested in getting into running. So if you're interested, or even just keen to look into the resources and daily speedrun streams, head over to the Speedrunning Discord, link will be in the description. Over the following few months, these individuals came up with multiple strategies to help with their gear and inventory management. And a number of specific contributions that I'll discuss today had the most substantial impact on breaking what barely anyone had done before, beating the 50-minute mark. As of late 2019, only two had overcome the 50-minute mark, both Adwam and Jolanine. Two absolute monsters in their own right, although the meta still had a long way to go. Thanks to the player known as Resh and his discoveries around removing Ancestral from the loadout in early 2020, both him and Corky would follow suit on breaking the barrier shortly after. Now, this introduction of the new loadout would also bring about changes in the regularity of chinning, as you'd switch to your alley and chins to deal with the mini blobs, hitting every 3 ticks as opposed to your 5 ticks with the barrage. This simple change would save you on average 3.3 ticks every set of minis. And with an advanced use of movement mechanics, clumping the bats and melees would achieve even more of a significant time save. For the most part, blood barraging nibblers would remain the same, although chinning the blobs alongside bruise and the blowpipe spec would just about do the trick. And all of these healing mechanics would be perfectly complemented by the use of the Phantom Barrage, which, as you can see on screen above, is only used in very specific circumstances, but can ultimately help you survive the onslaught of the wave ahead. On the last NPC, when using a relatively quick projectile attack, for example the blowpipe, you can stack the monster with a blood barrage on the last tick, dealing no real damage but has the chance to heal you on whatever damage roll you receive. This mechanic wasn't used very often, but it did play a part in the mitigation of death. And reducing the risk of death was one of the most integral roles of this particular speedrun, as if you died you'd have to tutorial skip until you received another task. Unfortunately, tutorial skipping was essential, and in order to run you had to do so. By using Neve or Steve, you simply had a 6 to 7% chance of receiving a Zuck task, and on average this could take anywhere from 45 minutes to 2 hours. So if you plan on running in the future, keep this in mind. 2-ticking revolutionized the reliability of speedrunning in its entirety. The increased versatility of 2-ticking made flicking 1 to 2 blobs while trying to off-tick both the range and major much more realistic, with significantly less clicks or room for error. And thanks to both AdWham and Exact, 2-ticking was brought to the forefront of speedrunning, making maneuverability much easier and decreasing the risk of missing your prayer flicks. This made the utilization of both the pillars and NPC drag distance a lot more viable, and you could realistically save a significant amount of time in doing so. An example of using the pillars or even far render distances of the NPCs would be to drag the monsters into clump range, meaning that over time you'd save both time and HP by chinning and phantom barraging. As I'm sure you've all seen by now, a lot of these concepts work the best when intertwined by one another, and in doing so is the only realistic way that a number of these runners are able to maintain consistent sub-50s. Fortunately for us today, this was around the time that speedrunning had caught the intrigue of the analytical titan himself, the player that goes by the name Adicon. A lot of the information you've seen today has come from Adicon himself, providing both his time, footage, and analytics. He's been a key asset to the speedrunning community and still to this day even holds the record itself, in which I'll go into further detail later on in the video. Joel, or otherwise known as Neen, was another key player invested into the speedrunning community, holding the record and even besting himself countless times over the course of 2 years. Neen was a pioneer in his own right, and he's always been kind and receptive to new players on the scene. AdWham, alongside the help of Exact, revolutionized the integration of various different game mechanics in the Inferno. He really was one of the originals, bringing popularity towards the subsect of speedrunning while streaming his runs on Twitch. Resh, as mentioned before, was the brains behind the loadout. Resh was a man to break the barrier that was so heavily reliant on RNG, and he did so many times over, remaining at the upper echelon all throughout his career. Corky, alongside both AdWham and Turney, was one of the early adopters of speedrunning, and he did so through Twitch, bringing further awareness around the topic. Corky also manages to remain in the top 5 record holders, along with holding rank 1 on his Ironman. Then there's Shawnee, holding multiple records across an array of different categories, all while remaining in the top 3 overall. These players, including those that I have little to no footage of, have all collectively contributed towards one final goal, one of the biggest barriers of the run, Tizkal Zuck. Over the course of the run, I'm sure you're all aware that there's a lot more that goes on behind the scenes which are in direct correlation to the player themselves. In particular, the decision making on where you are in space and time and how to react accordingly without wasting too many ticks in doing so. And when it comes down to sub-50s, in order to keep consistent you must be able to read and react to your layout within less than 2 ticks. Otherwise you simply won't meet your splits, and it's better off resetting before you even get to Zuck. This somewhat simple act really is a true testament to the player's abilities, and goes to show the quicker you can analyze your layout, the more consistent you'll become. Zuck splits nowadays boil down to the skips you take in regards to its spawns, and over time the skips have been extended to its absolute extremities. For a sub-55 run, you're expected to have great wave management alongside realistically skipping both the majors and JAD. And just to quickly put this all into perspective, an average cape time should range anywhere from 75 to 90 minutes, and that's likely skewed very heavily by cape selling in general. So ranging anywhere below 60 minutes is very impressive to say the least. Now when you break it down to sub 50s, this is a whole new ballpark. From an exponential point of view, you need to consistently manage your waves exceptionally, intertwine pillar health management with NPC drag, chin clumping, and much, much more. The sheer difficulty of this particular feat is so exceptional it's hard to even articulate. So with all that said, why don't we let the man who stands at the very top show us exactly what he's made of. I'd like to say a big thank you to all of those who have been directly involved in the development of speedrunning in Oldschool Runescape. And a big shout out to all of those who have been tirelessly grinding in their respective field, whether it be the Inferno or even the Theatre of Blood. And most importantly, you, the viewers who have made it this far into the video, are the individuals that will play a massive role in the future of this type of content. If you've enjoyed what you've seen here today, I urge you to like this video. With your help, these players will garner the respect they truly deserve for their endless effort. It really is a mission in itself to put into words how impressive the feats of these individuals really are. And if you're interested in more, make sure to leave a comment down below on the various pieces of content that you'd like to see run. And with all that said, I hope you have a wonderful day. And as always,
all the senses regards.